Okay, this is the first video for week 7. And we start the new chapter, which is the production theory. So we finished the consumer choice theory before the midterm in week 6. So from the week 7 until maybe week 9 or 10, we'll study about the production part, because we know in market equilibrium will consist of the two parts. The first part is the consumer or consuming part, and the other part is the production or producer part. So those two parts are two pillars for consisting of the market equilibrium or just market economy. So we study about the production theory from now on. So we knew week 7 went past because our midterm was held on the week 8. So we know this is pretty late video, but I will try my best to make up all the late videos in the upcoming weeks. So don't worry about the possibility of missing any weeks of videos until the end of the semester. I will upload every video for every week until the end of the semester. So you will see the video for each week from week 7 to week 15, but maybe week 15 will be the final exam. So the last video of last week of the uploading video will be the week 14. Okay, so you will see the video for every week, and the length of videos for each week will be at least the 60 minutes per week, because the university regulation sets up the length of video, which will have to be more than 60 minutes per week if we have the 3 credit course. So this course, the microeconomics, is the 3 credit course. So I will make each week video which will be longer than at least 60 minutes or an hour. Okay, so this is the first video of that. So I hope you guys done well on the midterm. I know some guys had a difficulties in solving some problems because it might be more mathematical than you thought or than you predicted, or you may have had some problems in the calculating some part of your answer. And I didn't grade yet all of them, but I looked up some answers from your side, and I thought you don't have to worry about too much because everyone messed up the midterm. So, and we have a little bit generous grading policy this semester because of the coronavirus 19. So you may have a little bit better chance to get A grade, better than you thought, because so even if you messed up your midterm, you are not so much behind all of the other students because everyone got messed up too. So this is just starting point again, and you can study hard. And now you know the direction of midterm and direction of the possible final exam. So you have the better information set to prepare well for your final exam. So I think you don't have to worry about too much about your grade at this point. The remaining part of this semester will consist of two parts in the bigger picture. The first part, we're gonna finish the production part. So we will study about how to find out the optimal production level for each producer in the perfect competitive market, as we've seen through the consumer choice theory. And after finish our market equilibrium part, then we go over a types of market. So far we have studied about just only one type of market, which is the perfect competition market or perfectly competitive market, which is defined very easily. And it is a little bit of ideal type of market. So it does not exist actually in our real world. So we lose some, or we relax some assumptions about the perfect competitive market. So we go over a little bit more complicated types of markets, such as the monopoly or oligopoly or monopol- monopolistic competitive market, which is, I think, the most common type of market in our real world. So I think if we study about each types of market, then it's going to be a time to say goodbye to each other. But even though we finish everything, and if we have enough time, then we study about some interesting part of microeconomics, such as the information asymmetrics or some game theory things. Those things are really popular in these days in the academic field of microeconomics. So if we have enough time, then we study about the part too. But I don't expect that is coming to us. Excuse me. Okay, so we study about this one. Sorry. I'm old. I'm dying. You guys are growing still. You guys are young and growing and fresh, but I'm going to die pretty soon, maybe in 40 years or 50 years, so I'm waiting for my death. That is life. Okay, so here are topics we study about the production sector, and we study about how a single producer will determine the optimal level of production level in the perfect competitive market. Okay, so we study about the definition of firm and the definition of production first, because the definition is always the best starting point for us if we study on new things. Okay, so we can define the types of firms by the types of ownerships or management. And after that, we define the production function. So again, the function is coming to us. It is mathematical terms, but we define a production function as the social scientific things. So that's really important, and that's the main difference between the natural science and the social science. You are studying the social science things, so we'll use the tools of mathematics, but we'll never be drawn out by the mathematical word or mathematical terms. We study about the human being's life, but we'll use some tools or some languages such as the English or the mathematics. And by using that terms or by using that tools, then we'll precisely define the human being's behavior, especially the market behavior or the market mechanisms right here. So production function is a function from the mathematical perspective, but it is a human being's behavior or human beings kinds of behavior mechanisms observed by economists. Okay, so you're gonna have to have that types of perspective or that types of point of view from the first week to the end of this semester while studying this microeconomics course. Okay, so we'll define very important term after that, the difference between the short term and the long run. Okay, so there are numerous ways to define the difference between the long run and the short run in economics, but in microeconomics, it will be defined by the existence of the fixed cost or not having the fixed cost. So we study about the variable cost and the fixed cost, because the cost management is the most important thing for a producer, because every producer wants to maximize their profit. That's just only one term you should memorize from this chapter. A producer or seller wants to maximize their profit. How to maximize their profit? They can minimize cost. Okay, so profit maximizing is always equal terms to the cost minimizing. So the cost is really important issue for every producer. So cost minimization process or the cost management is really important task for every producer. So we study about the cost management side, but it will be different between the long run and the short run situation. So we study about the short run and the long run. After that, we study about the scales of economy, which means that if you starting your farm, then you have only one worker. So you start small, but if your business is pretty much good or pretty much successful, then you're gonna scale up your business or your farm or your factory. So there will be some different perspectives on the scales of economy or scales of your business. And we study about that part by using some economic analytical tools. Okay, so before that topics, one big assumption is that the technology does not change, but we know the technology is one of very important part in the production side. So we study about the changes in technology or changes in the productivity. Then we're gonna have some foundations of production part, and in the next chapter we have some application study about this production sector. Okay, so how do you define a firm? It is really philosophical topic to us, because in many countries a firm is treated as kinds of surreal or abstract human. For instance, there is a corporate tax, right? So how does a government put a tax, or where does the government put a tax on? Who gonna take the duty of paying tax? The human, right? Only human beings can pay for a tax. Your dog does not have to pay for a tax. The baby doesn't have to pay for a tax, but a firm has to pay for a tax, which means that on legal term, a firm should be treated as one of the human beings. So it is really interesting topic for us, but at our level of microeconomics, a firm can be defined by a organization rather than the human beings. But if you study a taxation part in the other course in economics department, then it could be more complicated. So in microeconomics, a firm is defined by an organization that can convert input into output. Okay, so there are two important concepts: input and output. Input is nothing. People are doing something with them, like your labor, or like materials like copper or oils or iron or something. They are nothing. They don't have any values. Or even some energies like electronics. They are nothing to us, right? A firm can utilize those inputs into output, like the finished goods or the finished services that can be consumed by consumer in the market. So they have a market value, which is sometimes called a price or market price. So the farm has really important role in the market economy, because without a farm, we cannot consume anything. So all we starve and we're gonna die pretty soon. So the production sector is one of two important parts in the market economics, and we can define a firm like any kind of organization that can convert input into output. So a firm can be categorized by a types of ownership. So maybe Samsung Electronics or here the Hyundai Car Motors, they are the private sector because they are owned by a private company or the private human, right? But maybe Hanjeon or Korean Electronics or the Incheon airport, Incheon International Airport. Those types of companies are owned by the government, so we can call them a public sector. Okay. Also, there are some special firms that does not pursue any profit maximization, which is really abnormal firm in the market because if they don't make any profit, then they're gonna be kicked out of the market, but they still survive in the market because they have some specific and very special purpose of doing something, which is called the non-profit or not-for-profit sector. So we can call that MPO or the MPS or something. And we also need that types of firms because, and the importance of those types of firms has been growing in these days because equity has been more important than before in very competitive world right now. So we should not ignore the importance of the non-profit firms at these days, right? A firm can be also categorized by the methodologies of ownership or the running the firm. A firm can be owned by the single individual, or a firm can be owned by the partnerships or the jointly owned by two or more people. The corporations, that is the most common types of firm in these days, are owned by the shareholders in proportion to the numbers of shares of stock they hold. So the stock is very important concept in economics, but we skip this part a little bit because you can study about the financial market with this concept, and it is out of our scope in this course, the microeconomics, but it is really important concept in economics. So the structure of corporation firm or how to the value of stock has been volatile. So it is really important concept, but you can study about that in maybe financial economics in economics department if you are interested in. All right. So this is, I think, the main part of the chapter. So the main assumption of this whole chapter and maybe this whole course about a firm is that a firm seeks to maximize its profit. Okay, so every single firm wants to maximize their profit. So maybe social donation thing is not the interest by a firm, or making the world more peaceful thing. It is good, but a firm is not interested in making the world more peaceful. The only one interest for a single firm is to maximize their profit. Okay, so to study about the firm's behavior, then we should define a profit first. Okay, the profit is defined in economics by a revenue negative cost, like the equation number 1. So this is the linear equation, so it is easy. So there is no need to taking derivative or taking integral things with the equation number 1. Okay, so the profit is defined by a revenue negative the cost. So maximizing profit is equivalent to the minimizing cost, because the cost is the negative part of firm's profit. So it is called the duality concept or duality topic in microeconomics. You don't have to memorize that terms, but in microeconomics, if a firm wants to maximize a profit, then they will tend to minimize their cost, and solving profit maximization problem is always equivalent to solving the minimizing cost problem. Okay, so in order to maximize their profit, a firm should think about how to maximize their profit. And will invite one important economic concept, which is called the efficiency. Okay, so efficiency in economics is really a little bit complicated, and it is a little bit different from our common sense efficiency usually used in our normal life. So you should be a little bit careful about the definition of the efficiency in microeconomics. But in the production sector, you can just think about it like you can produce as many goods or services or the output as you can by using your all available input. Okay, so if you remember the production possibility frontier, okay, the outer line of the PPF is the most efficient point of the production. Okay, so you should remember the production possibility frontier from your principles of economics course or the lecture note. Okay, you should remind yourself with that. Okay, so the bottom line for a firm's profit maximization is how to utilize your available inputs the more efficiently than ever, okay, to produce the more goods or services. So like the consumer choice theory, the more is better. Definitely the more is better for producer, but the problem is that how to produce the more goods or services by using the available input that is pretty much limited by the environment of a firm encountered. Okay, so you want to have to think about what is the efficient production point for a single firm in every situation. That's a kind of the key to find out the easy way to understand the firm's behavior. So in order to make our problem a little bit simpler, we assume that there are only three available inputs in our world. The first input is the capital. Capital is a little bit abstract concept. You can think of a land or the factory or the machine or any kinds of equipment to produce goods or services. Just think about the chicken store, okay, or the chicken restaurant. If you retire your company at the age of the 60, then you may think about the opening of the new chicken ownership or the brand restaurant like the Gyochon chicken or the product, which is my recent favorite chicken. Anyway, then you should buy some equipment or you should rent a space for producing the chickens. All of them are a part of the capital. Okay, so in order to differentiate the labor, which is commonly called the physical capital, because the labor is usually assumed to be the human capital. Okay, so labor is the input provided by the human beings, so which is commonly called by the human capital things. So maybe you can hire any part-time workers to produce the chickens, or you can order your son or daughter to manage that chicken while you expand the business in the other places. So the management skills or physical workers or any kinds of input by the human beings or the labor or the human capital. More specifically, the labor could be categorized by the two parts. The first part is the skilled labor. Maybe professor is pretty good example for the skilled labor, and maybe the part-time worker is pretty good example for the unskilled labor, another types of workers. The skilled labor and the unskilled laborers are not clearly separated by each other, but usually economists can observe, okay, so this is the skilled labor and this is not skilled labor or the unskilled labor. The common characteristics of the unskilled labor is that they can be replaced easily by the other workers. Think about part-time job for you. If you work for the convenience store during the nighttime, but you're late for every night, then the manager will definitely cut you out in a week or two, and they're gonna hire the new student easily. So you are unskilled labor. But how about the professor? Can university cut me out in a week or two? Usually not, because I'm pretty much hard to be replaced by the other person because my research interest is pretty much unique, or my contribution to the university is pretty much unique, and I'm continuing my job, which has been continued for more than 2 years. So it is really hard to be replaced by the other person right now. So I'm kind of skilled labor here. It is what it is. Okay. So, and the third input is the materials things. It is kinds of raw goods like copper or iron or the electronics or water things. The importance of materials has been decreased in the recent age because it is a kind of fixed things, right? We cannot control over the amount of materials by ourselves because it is more like the supply side controlled. And some countries, such as the South Korea, we don't produce any materials here from the land of South Korean peninsula, so we cannot control over the amount of materials as an input. So it is really fixed in the country of South Korea or the other many countries. So the importance of materials in the cost minimization problem has been decreased over time. So we usually concentrate on the capital and the labor, only those two things, okay? So we can define the production function first. This is a function. So we have the input and we have output. And the production function is defined by the relationship between the input used by a firm and the quantity of output. So the output could be measured or could be estimated by the quantity. That is important. Given that the current knowledge about the technology and organization, which means that technology does not change over time now, but will vary this term or will relax this term a little later. So equation number 2 is the formal definition of the production function. The quantity of output, which will be efficiently produced, which means that this Q in the equation number 2 is the maximum amount of quantity this single firm can produce by using the amount of labor, L, and the amount of capital, the K, given the technology, the function of F. Okay? So the amount of labor is represented by the L. So it is a number. And the large K is the amount of capital input, which will be also represented by a number. And the function of F is a given technology, which hardly changes over time. But if you try harder, then this function of F can be changed as well. So you can control over the amount of L and the K, the input. And the quantity of output, the small q, will be the dependent variable, so you cannot control over. Okay. So this is mathematical term, but we can define this function with the social scientific words. That is the important thing as a student studying about the human being's life. Okay. So this is the graphical representation of production function. You have some input, and we don't know about the whole mechanism of this function. But the function is something like the machine that if you put some input, then you're going to have the output. So input and output are the two important parts consist of the production function. The mechanism, which will have some specific structure, which will be abstracted by the f of something. So you can put the amount of L and K into the function of f of something. Then you're going to get the output amount of the Q. Okay, so your purpose is to control the amount of L and K, or the labor and capital, to produce the maximum amount of output Q by using the given technology F. Okay. So already 30 minutes are done. So this is the first part. So I'm gonna record the second part pretty soon.